The night the world ended for Alara smelled of smoke. She had grown up in the valley village of Hallowmere, where the air was usually sweet with pine resin and the earthy scent of damp soil after rain. That night, however, the scent turned acrid. Flames licked the sky, painting the horizon in hues of red and orange as though the sun had been dragged down to burn among them. Alara ran barefoot across the uneven ground, her white shift torn at the hem. The rough earth cut her skin, but she hardly noticed. The cries of her people rang all around, some human, some wolf, all filled with terror. Inside, Alara. Her father's voice boomed, desperate and commanding. He shoved her toward the cottage, where her younger brother, Finn, huddled in the doorway. His small frame shook violently, his hazel eyes wide with fright. Alara's father shoved them both back as he drew his blade. "Stay down. Don't make a sound." But Alara couldn't obey. She could see them coming, the shadows moving through the smoke, warriors with the strength of wolves and the merciless eyes of predators. The crest on their armor gleamed in the firelight, a black wolf's head crowned with silver, the mark of Alpha Kale. Everyone in the kingdom knew that name. Parents whispered it to frighten children into obedience. Bards sang of his victories on the battlefield, painting him half hero, half demon. Some swore he had never once spared an enemy. Others whispered that the moon goddess herself had turned her face from him, and now he had come to her village. Alara's father raised his sword. But what was steel against the beasts that prowled in the smoke? Wolves lunged forward, their eyes glowing like embers. Alara screamed as one of them slammed into her father, jaws snapping for his throat. He fought bravely, gods, he fought, but the pack overwhelmed him. Blood sprayed against the dirt. His last roar of defiance echoed before it turned into a gurgle of silence. "No." Alara shrieked, struggling against Finn's grip as he dragged her back into the house. Her nails clawed the wooden doorframe, splinters biting into her skin, but he yanked her inside. The crash came moments later. The door was torn from its hinges, hurled into the flames, and then he appeared. Alpha Kale filled the doorway like a shadow cut from firelight, tall, broad, his presence eclipsing the world around him. His hair was black as midnight, his golden eyes gleaming with unnatural intensity. He wore no armor, only dark leather that clung to his muscled form, smeared with soot and blood. Alara froze. She had seen handsome men before, proud hunters, traveling traders, even betas from neighboring packs. But Kale was something else entirely. He was not beautiful in the way of bards' tales. He was terrifying. Sublime. Like a storm-given flesh, his gaze swept the cottage. It slid over Finn like one might glance at an insect. Before locking onto Alara, for one heartbeat. She thought she saw something flicker in those molten eyes, hunger, recognition, she couldn't tell. Then he spoke. His voice was a low growl that seemed to vibrate in her bones. "This bloodline owes me." Her brother whimpered. Alara forced herself to step forward, trembling but defiant. "We owe you nothing." A cruel smile tugged at his lips. "Bold little rabbit." He stepped inside, and the air itself seemed to shrink. He towered over her, shadow and fire wrapping around his frame. "You will understand soon enough." His clawed hand shot out, curling beneath her chin. She gasped as the sharp tips grazed her skin. Lifting her face to meet his gaze, "Tonight," he said softly, almost tenderly, though his words cut like blades. "You become mine." Behind him, the flames consumed her village. Screams faded into silence. The world she had known, her family, her freedom, her future, all of it turned to ash. And Alara, trembling in the grip of the most feared alpha in the realm, realized the nightmare had only just begun. Chapter 1. The claim. The fortress loomed like a scar against the horizon. Alara had seen castles before, sketched in old books her mother once kept hidden beneath the floorboards, their towers shining with white stone and golden banners. But this was no fairy tale stronghold. Alpha Kale's fortress was built of black obsidian rock, jagged and unwelcoming. Rising high above the burning forest like the teeth of some giant beast, the air grew colder as the wagon rattled across the drawbridge. Chains groaned, iron spikes scraped against stone, and the heavy gates closed behind them with a finality that made Alara's stomach twist. She sat chained inside the wagon, wrists raw from iron cuffs, her brother Finn beside her. His head leaned against her shoulder, his eyes closed, though she knew he wasn't asleep. He trembled with every sound, the howls in the distance, the barked orders of guards in wolf form, the hollow clang of armor echoing off stone walls. "Don't look," she whispered, tucking his head closer to her chest as the wagon jolted to a halt. But she couldn't help looking herself. The courtyard was alive with movement. Warriors in leather and steel shifted between forms, fur sprouting, bones cracking, claws scraping the ground before reforming into men again. Servants scurried past with their eyes lowered, carrying buckets of water and trays of food. Everyone moved with fear-tightened shoulders, as though every breath here was borrowed. And then he appeared. Alpha Kale descended the fortress steps with a predator's grace, each stride heavy with authority. His golden eyes locked instantly on Alara, ignoring the guards, the servants, even the prisoners chained in nearby wagons. The world seemed to narrow until there was only him. "Bring her," he ordered. His voice was low but carried across the courtyard, making even the wolves bow their heads. The guards hauled Alara to her feet, dragging her forward. Finn tried to follow, but a soldier shoved him back into the wagon, slamming the bars shut. "No!" Alara cried, thrashing against the iron grip on her arms. "Please, he's just a boy." Kale's eyes flicked to the cage, unreadable. "The boy is nothing to me. You are the one with a debt to pay." "I owe you nothing," she spat, fury breaking through her fear. For a moment, silence fell over the courtyard. Even the wolves froze. Then Kale smiled, not with warmth, but with something sharper, crueler. "You'll learn." The guards shoved her to her knees at the foot of the stone steps. Kale loomed above her, shadows draping across his broad shoulders. He tilted her chin up with 2 fingers, forcing her to meet those golden eyes. "You belong to me now," he murmured, the words silk and steel combined. "By order of blood, by right of conquest. Tonight, you take your place in my hall." Alara trembled but forced herself to glare at him. "I would rather die." His smile widened. "Oh, little rabbit," he said softly. "Death would be a mercy. And I do not deal in mercy." The courtyard doors opened. Torches hissed as servants emerged, bowing low. Kale turned and strode back toward the fortress without another glance. The guards yanked Alara to her feet, half dragging, half carrying her after him. Her bare feet scraped across the cold stone floor as she was hauled into the fortress, into the wolf's den itself, and as the heavy doors slammed shut behind her. The last rays of sunlight faded. The night had begun. Chapter 2. The Beast's Bride. The fortress was colder at night. Alara sat in the chamber they had locked her in. The fire in the hearth long since burned to embers. The walls pressed in on her, carved from black stone that swallowed light. She pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders, though no cloth could warm the fear in her chest. A sound echoed down the corridor, not footsteps, but a low growl, animal and unnatural. It grew louder, closer, until the iron lock on her door scraped open. Her breath caught. The figure that entered was not Alpha Kale as she had seen him in the courtyard. This was something else. His body was taller, broader, his skin rippling as though it barely contained what lurked beneath. His eyes glowed gold in the darkness, sharper than any wolf she had seen, and his teeth. Gods, they were fangs, long and jagged. Claws gleamed at the tips of his hands. Alara backed against the wall. "Stay away from me." The creature inhaled deeply, his chest rising. For a moment, she thought he might tear her apart. But then his gaze locked on hers, and something shifted. His breath came ragged, as if he were fighting himself. "Alara." His voice was rough, broken, barely human. She froze. He knew her name. It was Kale. The Alpha himself, twisted by some curse into this monstrous form. He staggered toward her, claws scraping stone. She braced for death, her heart hammering, but when he reached her, he didn't strike. He simply collapsed against the wall, trembling, his body caught between man and beast. Alara's instinct screamed to run. But something else, something softer, rooted her in place. She remembered how, as a child, she had calmed her brother's nightmares by telling stories. Slowly, she sank to the floor, her voice shaking. "There once was a hunter," she whispered, "who thought himself cursed by the moon. But the moon was not his enemy. She had given him her light so he would not be lost in the dark." Her words filled the silence, fragile but steady. The beast stilled. His breathing slowed. Those golden eyes, still glowing with fire, softened. He leaned closer, not in hunger, but in need. By the time her story ended, his monstrous form sagged into exhaustion. He pressed a clawed hand against the floor as if to steady himself, then turned away without a word. The door slammed shut behind him, leaving Alara alone again. But she was trembling for a different reason now. For the first time, she had seen the Alpha's curse, and for the first time, she wondered if her fate as his bride was more than chains and fear. Chapter 3. Chains of power. Morning light spilled into Alara's chamber, pale and unwelcome. She had not slept. Every time her eyes closed, she saw golden eyes glowing in the dark, claws scraping against stone, the monster's voice rasping her name. When the door creaked open, she flinched. But it wasn't the beast who entered. It was 2 servants, their heads bowed, arms full of silk and silver. His command, one whispered, not meeting her gaze. They laid the garments on her bed, a gown of midnight blue, stitched with threads that shimmered like stars. Jewels glittered at the neckline, far too fine for a girl who had been dragged here in rags. "I won't wear it," Alara said sharply. The servant's hands trembled. "He will know if you refuse." Her defiance faltered. She didn't want fear to rule her, but she remembered the beast, remembered how easily he could tear her apart. Slowly, she allowed them to dress her. The silk clung to her frame, heavy and cold. They led her through the fortress corridors, past stone arches and iron doors. Guards watched her with unreadable eyes. Some smirked, others looked away. All bowed when Alpha Kale appeared at the far end of the hall. He looked unchanged from yesterday, tall, broad, his stride confident, his eyes that same molten gold. No trace of the beast that haunted the night remained. His gaze swept over her, lingering on the gown. Approval flickered in his expression. "You wear power well," he said. "I wear chains," she snapped before she could stop herself. A murmur rippled through the guards. But Cale only smiled faintly, as though her defiance amused him. "Chains can be broken," he murmured. "Power cannot." He gestured, and the great doors to the throne hall swung open. Inside, long tables groaned beneath platters of meat and bread. Warriors feasted, their laughter loud, their movements rough. The air was thick with smoke and the scent of blood. Cale led her to the throne at the head of the hall. He sat, and with a gesture, forced her to sit beside him. The warriors' eyes turned to her. Some curious, some mocking, a few hungry, as though they wondered what the Alpha saw in her. "She is the Alpha's bride," Cale declared, his voice cutting through the noise like a blade. "You will honor her as you honor me." The hall fell silent. Every head bowed. Alara's stomach tightened. She had not chosen this place, this man, this fate. Yet here she sat, dressed like a queen, claimed like a possession. Her gaze drifted to Cale. His expression was unreadable, his attention fixed on the room. But his hand rested on the arm of her chair, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his skin. The memory of the beast's trembling form flickered in her mind. By day, he was power and steel. By night, he was something broken, cursed, and she was trapped between both. Chapter 4. The curse revealed. The fortress library smelled of dust and forgotten secrets. Alara trailed her fingers over the spines of ancient books, surprised that Cale had allowed her here at all. He had left her under the watch of 2 silent guards, but she knew this was no kindness. It was a cage with prettier walls. Her eyes caught on a worn leather volume, its title scratched away by time. She tugged it free and opened to a page where ink drawings curled across the parchment. A wolf, its body splitting in two, half shadow, half light. "Curious little rabbit," a voice drawled. Alara spun. Cale leaned in the doorway, arms folded, his golden eyes gleaming in the candlelight. He looked relaxed, but there was tension in the way he filled the space, as though even the library bowed beneath his presence. She clutched the book to her chest. "What is this?" "Old tales," he said, stepping closer. "Superstition." But the muscle in his jaw tightened, betraying him. Alara opened the book again, reading aloud. "The Alpha who betrays his oath shall bear the beast within. By day, a king. By night, a monster. Only love untainted by fear may break the curse." Her voice faltered. She looked up at him, heart pounding. "This is you." Silence stretched. Cale's smile was thin, dangerous. "Do you think a scrap of parchment defines me?" "I saw you," she whispered. "Last night. You were careful." His voice was low, sharp enough to cut. He closed the distance in 2 strides, his hand braced against the shelf beside her head. "Many have spoken of my curse. Few lived long enough to repeat it." Her breath hitched. But instead of shrinking, she met his gaze. "If it's not true, why hide it?" For a moment, something flickered in his eyes. Not anger. Not cruelty. Something rawer, pained. He turned away, pacing like a caged animal. "The curse is mine to bear. It is not yours to question." Her grip on the book tightened. "Then why bring me here? Why chain me to you, if you know what you become at night?" Cale stopped. His back was to her, his shoulders rigid. When he spoke, his voice was low, almost broken. "Because the beast listens to you." The confession hung in the air. Alara's chest tightened. She thought of the night before, how her story had calmed him. She had believed it a coincidence. But now, he faced her again, mask of control snapping back into place. "Do not mistake this for weakness. You are here because I chose it. Because I own you." Yet Alara saw the truth hidden beneath his steel. His power was real, his cruelty undeniable. But so was his torment, and for the first time, she wondered what it would mean to be bound to both man and beast. Chapter 5, Blood and Betrayal. The fortress gates opened to unexpected visitors. Alara stood at the edge of the courtyard as a small procession entered. Cloaked figures carrying banners she knew too well. Her heart stuttered, the colors of Halomir. Her village. Her blood, and leading them was her sister. Lyra had always been the beauty of their family, golden hair, bright blue eyes, the kind of smile that drew every suitor. Alara had loved her once, had trusted her. But the moment Lyra's gaze slid toward her in the courtyard, all Alara felt was unease. "Alpha Cale," Lyra said sweetly, bowing low before him. "I've come to bargain." The warriors muttered, surprised at her boldness. Few mortals dared speak to the cursed Alpha without trembling. Cale descended the steps, his golden eyes narrowed. "And what could your bloodline possibly offer me that I don't already have?" Lyra's gaze flicked to Alara. Her lips curved into a smile that chilled her sister's bones. "Her place? I can be the bride you need. Stronger. More willing. Untainted by fear." Alara's breath caught. "Lyra," her sister ignored her, stepping closer to Cale. "Let her go, and I will take her chains. I will stand at your side, as your Luna." The courtyard fell silent. Even the guards shifted uneasily, watching Cale's reaction. Alara's heart pounded. A part of her wanted to scream, to demand her freedom. But another part, the part that had seen the beast in the night, the man beneath the curse, recoiled. Cale studied Lyra with cool amusement. He reached out, brushing his thumb along her jaw as though testing the shape of her courage. For a heartbeat, Alara thought he might agree, then he laughed. It was a dark, cutting sound that echoed off the walls. You think I choose brides as one chooses wine? You insult me. Lyra stiffened, her beauty faltering. But Cale shoved her back with a flick of his hand. She stumbled, nearly falling to the stones. Alara is mine. No bargain, no blood, no pretty face will change that. The words rang like chains, binding Alara tighter than ever. Lyra's eyes darkened with fury. She turned on her sister, voice low and venomous. Then may your chains choke you, Alara. Don't expect me to save you again. She swept from the courtyard. Her cloak snapping like a whip behind her. Alara stood frozen, Cale's warriors dispersing around them. Her sister's betrayal cut deeper than the Alpha's claim, and when Cale leaned close, his whisper brushed her ear like fire. Do you see, little rabbit? Even your own blood would trade you away. But I will never let you go. Alara's knees threatened to give out. For the first time, she realized her cage was not only made of stone and chains. It was made of the Alpha himself. Chapter 6, The beast's hard days passed in a blur of shadow and stone. Alara learned quickly that the fortress had rules: never wander after sundown, never question the Alpha's orders, and above all, never show fear. Fear was weakness, and weakness was death, yet Cale did something she didn't expect. One evening, instead of summoning her to the Great Hall, he led her down a spiral staircase, deeper into the fortress. She followed warily, her bare feet echoing on the cold stone. At the end of the corridor, he pushed open a pair of carved doors. Inside lay a vast chamber, lined with shelves that stretched to the ceiling. Books, scrolls, ancient tomes, more than Alara had ever seen in her life. A library hidden in the belly of the beast's fortress. Her breath caught. Why would you show me this? Cale's expression was unreadable, though his voice carried a faint edge of softness. You calm the monster with your stories. Perhaps you will calm me with more. He stepped closer, towering over her, his golden eyes catching the lamplight. This place is yours, little rabbit. Write. Read. Do what you must. But remember, it is a gift from me. And gifts are never free. Alara's chest tightened. She should have hated him for the chains, the claim, the curse that bound them together. But in that moment, she saw something different, a man who had built walls of stone and shadow, yet still longed for a fragment of light. That night, when the beast came, she was ready. She sat on the floor with an open book, reading aloud until her voice grew hoarse. The creature's claws dug into the stone, his breath ragged, but he listened. When she faltered, his head lowered beside her, monstrous and trembling. And Alara did the unthinkable, she reached out. Her hand brushed against his fur, hot and coarse beneath her fingers. The beast shuddered. But did not pull away. Alara's heart thundered. Somewhere beneath the curse, beneath the claws and the golden eyes, Alpha Cale was still there. And for the first time, she wondered if her chains had bound her to more than a monster. Perhaps they had bound her to a man. Chapter 7, Fire at dawn. The fortress had never known silence. Wolves patrolled the walls, guards barked orders, steel clashed in the training yards. But at dawn, on the 7th day of Alara's captivity, the silence was wrong. Heavy. Waiting. She felt it before she heard it. A shift in the air, a prickle at the back of her neck. She rose from her bed just as the first horn sounded an attack. The doors of her chamber burst open. A soldier rushed in, armor dented, blood streaking his cheek. Stay here, he barked. The Alpha commands it. But Alara could hear the chaos rising, the clash of steel, the howl of wolves, the scream of fire. She shoved past him, heart hammering. Smoke filled the corridors. Shadows darted across the walls. She stumbled into the courtyard and froze. The fortress burned. Arrows rained from the cliffs above, their tips aflame. Wolves fought wolves in a blur of fur and blood. The air rang with snarls and the clash of blades, and in the center of it all was Cale. He fought like a storm-given flesh, his sword flashing, his claws tearing through enemies as though they were paper. His golden eyes blazed with fury, his voice a growl that carried across the battlefield. No one touches what is mine. Alara's breath caught, not with fear, but with something far more dangerous. Then she saw a rival warrior. Cloaked in red, creeping through the smoke. His blade aimed not at Cale, but at his back. At his heart. Cale. She screamed. He turned too late. The blade drove forward. Alara moved without thinking. She grabbed a fallen shield and hurled it with all her strength. The clang of iron against iron rang out as the shield struck the assassin's arm, throwing his strike off course. Cale spun, claws flashing. The enemy fell, throat torn open, crimson spilling across the stones. For a heartbeat, everything slowed. Cale turned, his golden eyes locking on her. Shock flickered there. Then something else, pride. The battle raged on, but Kale was at her side in moments, his hand gripping her arm, his voice rough. Foolish rabbit. Do you crave death? Her knees shook, but she lifted her chin. I won't watch from the shadows while you bleed. If I must wear your chains, then I'll fight with them. His grip tightened. His jaw worked as though he wanted to scold her, but his gaze softened instead. For the first time, his voice lost its edge. Brave little rabbit, he murmured, then the horn sounded again, signaling retreat. The enemy fled into the smoke, leaving the fortress scarred but standing. As silence fell once more, Kale pulled her close, his breath hot against her ear. You risked yourself for me. Do you know what that means? Alara's heart pounded. That I am no coward. He smiled faintly, a predator's smile tinged with something gentler. No. It means you're already mine. And with the fortress burning around them, Alara realized it wasn't only chains that bound her now. It was choice. And that terrified her more than the fire. Chapter 8. The choice. The night was heavy with storm clouds, and Alara felt as though the very heavens bore witness to the weight of the truth she had just uncovered. The scroll trembled in her hands, its ancient ink smudged from her tears. The words etched into its brittle parchment burned themselves into her mind, over and over again. The curse may be undone by sacrifice. A choice of the heart, binding soul to soul, or forsaking the bond entirely. Her stomach twisted. Her heart pounded in her chest so violently she thought it might shatter her ribs. The truth wasn't what she had hoped for. No easy path, no hidden ritual, no goddess descending to lift the torment that plagued Kale. Only a decision. Hers. Alara staggered back, clutching the scroll to her chest. The dim light of the chamber made the stone walls feel suffocating. She wanted to scream, to tear the parchment apart, to deny the words written centuries ago. But she couldn't. She had seen the mark of the moon goddess herself woven into the final line. It was undeniable. The door creaked. She turned, and there he was. Kale. His presence filled the room like a storm tide, vast, commanding, dangerous, yet painfully human in the way his shoulders sagged. His eyes, that deep molten gold, searched her face. He knew something was wrong. Alara, he said, voice rough, as though speaking her name alone steadied him. What have you found? Her throat closed. She wanted to tell him everything. But to speak the words aloud meant binding herself to them. And once said, there would be no turning back. Kale stepped closer. His tall frame shadowing her, his scent, pine and smoke, wrapping around her like chains. Tell me. Her lips trembled. It's not what I thought. The curse? It isn't something I can simply heal. It demands a price. He stilled. The air grew colder between them. What kind of price? His voice carried both fear and resignation, as though he had lived long enough with despair to expect no mercy. Alara closed her eyes, gripping the scroll tighter. 2 paths. The first. Her breath hitched. The first is to break the bond. If I do, you'll remain cursed forever, Kale. You'll never be free. Silence. A muscle in his jaw flexed, but he said nothing. The second. She hesitated, words catching in her throat. Her palms slick with sweat. The second demands that I surrender everything. My freedom. My will. To embrace you, all of you. To love the beast entirely, and bind myself to it forever. No escape. No turning away. Her voice cracked on the last word. The scroll slipped from her hands, scattering across the cold stone floor. Kale's gaze never left her. His face was unreadable, but his eyes? They burned. Alara, he murmured, as if testing the weight of her name. You mean? You would be bound to me. To the beast. To the part of me that hungers, that rages, that destroys. Her chest ached. Yes. And if you don't? His tone was sharp now, a blade pressing at her resolve. I walk away, she whispered. And you live with the curse. Forever. The words fell between them like a death sentence. For a long time, neither spoke. Only the storm outside broke the silence, thunder rattling through the castle walls, lightning casting fleeting shadows across his face. Kale finally turned away, as if her gaze was too much to bear. He pressed a hand against the stone wall, muscles taut beneath his tunic. You shouldn't have to choose this, he growled. The goddess is cruel to demand it of you. Alara swallowed hard. It isn't fair. But it's the truth. His shoulders rose and fell with the weight of his breath. And what does your heart say? Her breath caught. Of all the questions he could have asked, it was the one she dreaded most. What did her heart say? That she loved him. That every stolen moment, every touch, every glance that lingered too long had bound her to him already. That even when she had hated him, her soul had never been able to turn away. But fear? Oh, the fear clawed at her, whispering that to surrender to him fully meant losing herself. No more freedom. No escape. To embrace the beast meant to live in shadow, to belong to him in ways she couldn't undo. I don't know, she admitted, voice trembling. I'm terrified, Kale. Terrified of being consumed. Of disappearing into you. He turned then, eyes blazing, a storm barely contained. And you think I don't fear consuming you? His voice was harsh, but beneath it lay raw desperation. Every time you stand near me, every time your scent drives me mad, I fight not to lose control. Do you know what it is to love someone so much you fear destroying them? Her chest tightened. She had never heard him speak so openly, so nakedly. The beast inside him, the king, the man, all of them tore through his words. Alara, he said again, softer now. If you choose to leave, I will let you. I will bear the curse. I have lived with it this long. I can endure it until death. But if you stay, his voice cracked. If you stay, I swear, I will spend my every breath learning to love you without breaking you. Tears blurred her vision. He meant it. Every word, and still. She hesitated. The following days were a torment. Alara wandered the castle halls, haunted by the weight of the choice. Every shadow reminded her of the beast's eyes. Every memory of Kale's touch set her skin aflame. She tried to imagine walking away, returning to the world beyond these cursed walls, living free. But the thought left her hollow, like a body without a soul, and then she tried to imagine surrendering. Binding herself fully, forever, to him. To the beast that lurked beneath his skin. Could she? Could she give up her freedom, her will, her very self, for love? One evening, she stood in the moonlit garden, staring at the roses that had once been vibrant but now wilted beneath the curse that plagued the land. Her hands trembled as she touched a dying bloom. She remembered Kale's words, I will spend my every breath learning to love you without breaking you, Alara. His voice was behind her. She turned. Kale stood at the edge of the garden, moonlight painting him in silver. His eyes glowed faintly, betraying the beast's nearness. I can't make this choice for you, he said, his voice steady despite the storm in his gaze. But whatever you decide, I will accept it. Her heart twisted. She wanted to scream at him, to beg him to take the choice away, to force her hand so she wouldn't have to bear the burden alone. But that wasn't who he was. He would never cage her, even when caging her might save him. The night stretched long. She stood in silence, torn between love and fear, duty and freedom. The moon watched, cold and distant, as though amused by her torment, and deep inside, Alara knew the truth. No matter which path she chose, her life would never be the same. The chapter ends with Alara standing in the garden, roses withering in her hands, Kale's glowing eyes watching her, and the scroll's words echoing in her mind, to forsake the bond, or surrender to love entirely. The choice was hers. And she was running out of time. Chapter 9. The Wedding of Shadows. The palace had never shone so brightly. Hundreds of lanterns hung from the towering spires, spilling warm light across the marble courtyards. The scent of roses and moon lilies drifted through the air, mingling with the low hum of drums and the chorus of wolves howling in unison. Nobles in velvet cloaks and warriors in polished armor filled the grand hall, their eyes all fixed on the altar. Tonight, the cursed Alpha would take his Luna. Tonight, Alara would become queen. She stood at the far end of the aisle, her gown a cascade of silver silk that shimmered like water under the chandeliers. Her hair had been woven with threads of moonlight, her skin glowing beneath the veil. She had never looked, or felt, like this before. And yet, beneath the beauty, her heart thundered like a trapped bird. Every step she took was heavy with meaning. She was not just walking toward Kale. She was walking toward the pack. The kingdom, the future that waited in the shadows. At the altar, Kale stood tall, his black hair falling loose around his shoulders, his golden eyes steady as they fixed on her. His usual armor was gone. Instead, he wore ceremonial robes, deep crimson embroidered with the sigil of the wolf. He looked every inch a king. And yet, when his gaze softened as she drew closer, she saw not just the Alpha, but the man beneath, the one who had held her when nightmares tore her apart. The one who had whispered promises he was afraid to make out loud. The drums quieted as she reached him. The officiant raised his hands. Tonight we witness not just a union, but the mending of what was broken. The Alpha and his Luna, joined under the gaze of the moon goddess. Kale extended his hand. Alara placed hers in his, her fingers trembling. His voice was steady as he vowed, with this bond, I make you not just my queen, but my equal. No curse, no shadow, no enemy will take you from me. Her throat tightened. The words caught like thorns in her chest. But when the officiant turned to her, she forced her voice to steady, and I vow to walk beside you. To see you not as monster or curse, but as the man the goddess chose for me. The hall erupted in applause. Wolves howled, nobles clapped, drums roared back to life. For a heartbeat, Alara let herself believe it would end here, that love could drown out everything else. But then the doors slammed open, the sound cracked through the hall like thunder. Warriors surged forward, but too late. A dozen figures strode inside, clad in blackened armor, eyes glowing amber with the wild light of the rival pack. At their center was Darius, the wolf who had sworn to see Kale ruined. Gasps echoed as he raised his voice. You dare crown a cursed Alpha as king? You dare bind this kingdom to his doom? The room erupted in chaos. Kale stepped forward, his jaw clenched, his beast stirring beneath his skin. Leave, Darius. You will not taint this night. Darius only laughed, sharp and cruel. You think you can hide it from them forever? Show them, Kale. Show your precious bride what you really are. Before Kale could stop him, Darius flung a vial across the floor. Smoke exploded in a burst of acrid silver dust, the kind that burned wolves' lungs and forced their beasts to the surface. Kale staggered, clutching his chest. His golden eyes flared, then darkened into something wild. His body convulsed as the curse clawed its way out, his hands twisting into claws, his teeth lengthening into fangs. The crowd screamed. Alara's heart dropped. She had seen his beast before, but never like this. Not in front of the kingdom. Not when he couldn't control it. Monster! Someone shouted, "Cursed Alpha!" Cried another. The nobles stumbled back, horror etched on their faces. Warriors raised their blades. Even some of Kale's own pack hesitated, fear rooting them in place. Kale roared, slamming his claws into the marble, cracks spiderwebbing beneath his hands. His chest heaved as he fought the transformation, his voice breaking through the growl, "Alara? Don't look at me." But she couldn't look away. Darius's laughter rang out. "See? This is the beast you bow to. This is the curse you crown. He will bring nothing but ruin." The hall turned into chaos. Guests rushed for the doors, wolves snarled in confusion, and whispers of treachery filled the air, and in the middle of it all, Alara stood frozen, her heart warred inside her chest. She had always known the curse was real. She had seen it in Kale's eyes, felt it in his trembling hands when he thought she was asleep. But to see it exposed like this, to watch the entire kingdom recoil in horror, it made her knees weak. Kale's golden eyes found hers through the haze of his beast. They burned with fear, not fear of the enemy, not fear of death, but fear of her. Fear that she would leave him. "Alara," he rasped, his voice breaking, "don't choose me." The words shattered her, the crowd's voices pressed around her like knives. "He's cursed. He's dangerous. He'll destroy us all." Her wolf stirred inside her, restless, furious. "He's ours. He's always been ours." Alara's chest tightened as tears blurred her vision. This was the moment. The choice. She could walk away, claim freedom, and the kingdom would accept her. Or she could step forward, claim him, and carry his curse as her own. Her body trembled as silence fell, the crowd waiting, the pack watching. Kale lowered his head, bracing for rejection, and Alara stepped forward. She lifted her chin, her voice ringing across the hall. "This man is my mate. My alpha. My king. Curse or not, I stand with him." Gasps tore through the room. Darius's smug grin faltered. Alara moved closer, until she stood directly in front of Kale's beast. Her hands shook as she touched his bloodied chest, ignoring the heat of his trembling muscles. "You are not the curse," she whispered fiercely. "You are Kale. And I choose you." Kale's beast shuddered, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The bond between them flared, light surging against the darkness, holding him back from the abyss. The crowd was divided, half horrified, half awed. But none could deny what they had witnessed. Alara had chosen, she had claimed the cursed alpha before the entire kingdom. The turning the ceremony never resumed. The rival pack fled into the night, but the damage was done. The curse was no longer rumor or whisper, it was truth, revealed before nobles, warriors, and commoners alike. Some bowed their heads in respect for Alara's courage. Others turned away in disgust, muttering that a cursed alpha could never rule. Kale stood silent through it all, his beast retreating, his body shaking. His hand never let go of Alara's, even when the hall emptied and only their closest warriors remained. He whispered, "Broken, you shouldn't have chosen me. You deserve freedom, not this." Alara held his hand tighter. "I chose you because I love you. And I won't let shadows decide our fate." But in her heart, fear lingered. She had claimed him before the kingdom, but what price would that choice demand? Chapter 10. The broken bond. The moon hung pale and broken above the ruined wedding hall, blood stained the marble floors, mingling with the remnants of silk and shattered glass. The air still carried the metallic stench of death, mixed with smoke from the torches that had been overturned in the chaos. Alara stumbled through the wreckage, her gown ripped, her hands trembling. Every scream, every face that had fallen beneath claw and fang, burned in her mind, and at the center of it all was Kale. He had fought like a storm. His beast tearing through every assassin that dared to come near her. But in his fury, in the wildness of the curse, innocence had fallen too. The massacre had not been the enemy's victory, it had been the curse's. Alara's heart couldn't bear it. She couldn't stay. When Kale reached for her, his golden eyes begging her to stay, she had stepped back. Her voice cracked as she whispered the words that cut deeper than any blade, "I can't do this anymore." And then she ran. The forest swallowed her whole, branches whipped against her skin. Roots clawed at her feet as she ran barefoot into the night. She didn't know where she was going, only that she had to put distance between herself and Kale before the bond dragged her back. Her chest heaved with sobs that shook her from within, every part of her wolf screamed to turn back, to throw herself into his arms, to remind him that the massacre wasn't his fault alone. But her human heart. Her human heart was drowning in grief. By dawn, she collapsed near a stream, her gown muddied and torn. She cupped water into her shaking hands, but even the icy rush couldn't cleanse the ache in her chest. Her reflection stared back at her from the rippling surface, pale, hollow-eyed, broken. The bond tugged at her, sharp and insistent. She could feel his pain echoing down the invisible thread, the way he was clawing at the absence of her. It hurt. It hurt so badly that she pressed her fists to her chest to keep from shattering, but she didn't turn back. She couldn't. Back at the castle, Cale stood alone amidst the wreckage. The halls were silent now, save for the soft weeping of servants who carried away the dead. His hands were still stained with blood, his chest raw from where Alara had pulled away. He could have chased her. He could have forced her to stay, thrown himself at her feet and begged. But he hadn't, because she deserved freedom. The curse had always been his burden, not hers. He had brought it to her doorstep the moment the moon goddess tied their fates together. And after what she had seen at the wedding, the carnage his beast had wrought, how could he chain her to him any longer? Cale stood in the great hall until the torches burned low, until the shadows crawled across the stone. His warriors watched from afar, uneasy. They wanted to tell him to go after her. But one look at their alpha's face, cold and hollow, silenced them. She's gone, Cale muttered to himself, his voice raw. And maybe that's mercy. But when he closed his eyes, the bond snapped tight, and he felt her tears through it. And his knees nearly buckled. Days turned into weeks. Alara wandered from village to village, hiding her face beneath a hood, offering her healing skills in exchange for shelter. The people welcomed her kindness, but even among them, she was adrift. Nights were the hardest, when the bond screamed at her, reminding her of Cale's misery. She dreamt of him almost every night. His voice whispering her name. His arms around her, protective and warm. The memory of his kiss before the massacre. She would wake with tears on her cheeks, clutching her chest as though she could claw the ache out. Her wolf grew restless, pacing beneath her skin. Go back. He needs you. We need him. But Alara silenced the voice. She told herself Cale was safer without her. That the kingdom would heal without her presence stirring the cursed alpha's heart, yet deep down, she knew the truth. She wasn't running to protect him. She was running because she was afraid of how much she loved him. Cale, meanwhile, was unraveling. The kingdom had begun to whisper. Rumors spread of an alpha too dangerous to control his beast, too weak to keep his mate at his side. The council pressed him for answers, demanding he take another Luna to stabilize the bond. He silenced them with a single glare, but the words festered. At night, he roamed the forests in beast form, howls splitting the air. Wolves in distant packs lifted their heads, uneasy, hearing the anguish carried on the wind. He pretended to rule with strength, but inside, he was hollow. Every battle he won, every treaty he signed, felt meaningless without her, and though he told himself he let her go for her freedom, a darker truth gnawed at him. He had let her go because he feared what he might do to her if she stayed, but freedom came with a price neither of them expected. While Alara tried to bury her grief in healing strangers, a shadow moved across the land. The rival Alpha Darius was gone, but power never left a vacuum. In the south, a warlord rose from obscurity, one who claimed to be blessed by the moon goddess herself. His army grew with frightening speed, not just wolves but humans, witches, and rogues bound by promises of vengeance. He called himself Malric. And unlike Darius, Malric was not after territory or titles. His war was personal. He wanted Cale's blood. Word of Malric's rise reached the villages quickly. Alara heard whispers in hushed taverns, saw the fear in the eyes of traveling merchants. She overheard one soldier mutter, "The cursed Alpha won't stand a chance. Malric knows how to kill monsters." Her stomach turned cold. She told herself it wasn't her fight anymore. She had left that world behind, but when she closed her eyes, the bond flared. Cale's fear, his exhaustion, his loneliness pulsed through her like a heartbeat, and for the first time since she fled, Alara wondered if running away had been her greatest mistake. Cale knew of Malric before the council even dared to speak his name. Scouts brought back stories of villages burned, packs slaughtered, and dark rituals whispered beneath the blood moon. Malric's followers weren't just soldiers, they were fanatics. They believed the curse wasn't a punishment, but a doorway. That Cale's existence was the key to unleashing something far worse. Cale sat alone in the war room, maps spread before him, his head bowed into his hands. He should have felt rage. He should have felt the call to battle. Instead, he felt tired. The bond ached constantly, pulling him toward Alara. Every moment without her felt like he was bleeding slowly, invisibly, from a wound no one else could see. And now, with a new enemy rising, his kingdom needed him whole. But how could he be whole when half of him was gone? A knock sounded at the door. His beta entered, bowing low. "Alpha, the people are losing faith. They say the bond is broken. They say you are weaker without your mate." Cale's jaw clenched. They are not wrong. His beta hesitated, then asked the question Cale dreaded most. "Will you bring her back?" Kale closed his eyes, his chest aching with the memory of her voice saying, "I can't do this anymore." "No," he whispered. "She chose her freedom. I will not chain her with my curse." But even as he said it, the bond throbbed. A painful reminder that freedom was an illusion neither of them truly had. Alara heard the call before she admitted it. She was in a small village when Malrik's army struck. The night erupted with fire and screams, wolves tearing through thatched roofs while humans in blood-red armor dragged innocents into the streets. Alara ran with the others, pulling children into her arms, using her healing to keep the wounded alive, but when one of Malrik's soldiers cornered her, sneering that the cursed Alpha's whore would fetch a fine prize. Something inside her snapped, she shifted, her wolf exploded from her skin in a surge of silver and white, her fangs tearing through the soldier's throat. The crowd gasped as she stood over the corpse, blood dripping from her maw. She realized then that no matter how far she ran, she would always be tied to Kale, and to the war that followed him, and maybe, just maybe, she was done running. By the time dawn broke, the village was in ruins. Survivors whispered about the silver wolf who had defended them, calling her a gift from the moon goddess. Alara ignored them, her body shaking as she stared at the blood on her hands. The bond flared hotter than ever. Kale Chapter 11. The final hunt. The forest was too quiet. No rustle of leaves, no whisper of night wind, no sound of prey stirring. Alara's breaths came quick and shallow as the ropes dug into her wrists. The rival Alpha's pack had dragged her deep into the shadowed woods, tying her to the roots of a dead oak. The bark cut into her back, but that was nothing compared to the fear coiling in her chest. She had felt Kale's bond flare only hours before, desperate and furious, a beast howling for her. And now, bound beneath the cold glow of the half-moon, she prayed he would come before it was too late. The rival Alpha, Darius, paced in front of her. His eyes glowed amber, feral and cruel, the kind of hunger only power could breed. "You should have known this would happen," he said, his voice deep and sharp as broken glass. "Kale's curse makes him weak. And weakness," he leaned closer, his hot breath grazing her ear, "is something I devour." Alara forced her chin up. "If you think binding me will make Kale kneel, you know nothing about him." Darius laughed, low and mocking. "Oh, I know plenty. I know he fears losing you more than death itself. That makes you the perfect weapon." Her heart stuttered. That truth cut too close, she knew it too. Kale had fought the curse all his life, but his love for her had become its sharpest blade. Somewhere in the distance, a howl ripped through the silence. It wasn't a normal wolf's cry, it was deeper, wilder, a call that shook the very marrow of her bones. Every wolf in Darius's pack froze for half a heartbeat. Alara's lips parted, and for the first time since being dragged here, hope surged hot in her chest. Kale. He was coming. The ground trembled under pounding paws. Shadows raced through the trees as wolves closed in from every side. Darius's pack bristled, ears pinned back, their own snarls echoing through the clearing. Then he appeared. Kale burst into the circle of torchlight. No longer half man, half wolf, but something older, something monstrous and divine. His beast form towered above the rest, fur as black as the night sky, streaked with silver where the moonlight kissed him. His eyes glowed molten gold, filled with fury and something even more dangerous, desperation. Alara gasped, tears burning her eyes. She had never seen him like this, never seen him unleash the full force of what the curse had tried to twist into a burden. Now, it looked like salvation. "Kale," she whispered, though he couldn't hear her over the howls erupting. Darius bared his teeth, his own body snapping and contorting as he shifted into his wolf. His form was massive, thick with muscle and scarred from battles won. But compared to Kale's beast, he seemed smaller. Almost human in his rage. They collided. The fight wasn't elegant, it was savage, primal. Claws tore through flesh, teeth sank into fur, snarls split the night air. The pack encircled them, but not one wolf dared to interfere. The power radiating from Kale was too consuming, too terrifying. Alara struggled against the ropes, the bark cutting her wrists raw. "Kale," she cried, her voice hoarse. She didn't care if it distracted him. She needed him to know she was here, alive, waiting. Kale's beast slammed Darius into the dirt, jaws snapping just inches from the rival Alpha's throat. But Darius twisted, slashing across Kale's flank. Blood sprayed, dark and hot, staining the earth. Alara's heart clenched. No. The ropes gave way under her frantic struggle. She tore free, stumbling forward just as Darius lunged for Kale's exposed side. Without thinking, she threw herself between them, hands raised. Darius froze mid-lunge, his jaws grazing her arm. His eyes flared wide, confusion flickering for just a second. That second was all Kale needed. With a roar that shook the trees, Kale drove his claws deep into Darius's chest. Bone cracked. Flesh tore. Darius let out a strangled yelp before his body collapsed, twitching, lifeless on the ground. The clearing went silent. Every wolf bowed its head, tails lowering in submission. The rival pack was broken, but Alara didn't see them. She turned only to Kale, whose beast form still loomed, chest heaving, eyes wild. He was covered in blood, both his and Darius's, his fur matted, his claws trembling with the effort not to strike again. "Kale," she whispered, stepping closer. Her voice was the only tether keeping him from spiraling fully into the curse. "It's me. It's Alara." His golden eyes locked on her, flickering with recognition. He took a shaky step back, as if afraid of what he might do to her. She didn't let him retreat. She closed the distance, her hands reaching for his fur, soft and wet with blood. Her fingers curled against his chest. "You didn't lose me. You never will." The beast trembled beneath her touch, her throat tightened, words tearing free before fear could silence them. "Kale, I love you." It was the first time she had said it out loud, the first time she let the truth unravel from her chest. Her voice cracked, but the power behind it was unshakable. For a moment, nothing moved. Then Kale's massive form shuddered, muscles rippling as though the words had broken something deep inside. His claws receded. His snout shortened. The monstrous fur dissolved into skin, and there he was, Kale, naked, scarred, bloodied, but human again. His chest rose and fell rapidly, his eyes now glowing faintly with tears. You love me?" His voice was broken, disbelief roughening every syllable. Alara cupped his face, smearing blood across his jaw. "I always have. Even when I tried to fight it. Even when the curse told me I shouldn't. I love you, Kale." His arms wrapped around her with crushing force, as if holding her was the only thing keeping him alive. His lips found hers, desperate, hungry, sealing a promise older than both of them. The bond between them surged. No longer just a fragile thread but a roaring blaze that set her veins alight, but with it came the curse's final test. The ground cracked beneath them, splitting with a sound like thunder. The dead oak behind them ignited with unnatural fire, blue flames curling up its hollow trunk. The wolves howled in terror, scattering into the trees. Kale pulled Alara behind him, his body taut with tension. "It's not over," he growled, his eyes scanning the fire as shapes began to emerge. From the flames rose shadows, specters with eyes like dying stars, whispering in a tongue that made Alara's skin crawl. They circled, dozens of them, their voices weaving into a single hiss. "To love the cursed one is to suffer the curse." Alara gripped Kale's hand, her fear swallowed by something stronger. "Then we suffer it together." The shadows lunged. Kale roared, his body shifting halfway, claws forming as he braced for the impossible fight. Alara stood at his side, her pulse steady despite the storm around them. Their bond thrummed between them, defiant and unyielding, whatever this final test demanded. They would face it as one. Chapter 12. The Alpha's cursed bride. The battlefield was silent after the storm. Ash drifted like snow across the clearing where the final shadows had burned away. The twisted remnants of the curse still hung in the air, black smoke curling and fading with every breath of wind. Wolves circled the edges of the clearing, their bodies tense, their eyes on Kale and Alara. Alara's chest heaved, her hands shaking as she clung to Kale's arm. The curse had tried to consume him one last time, the shadows clawing their way through his beast form, whispering that he was nothing but a monster. She had thrown herself into the darkness, shouting her love into its maw, refusing to let it take him, and now everything was still. Kale lay in the center of the clearing, his body bare and broken, blood smeared across his skin. His golden eyes fluttered open, dazed, uncertain. He whispered her name like it was a prayer. "Alara." She fell to her knees beside him, cradling his face in her hands. "I'm here. I didn't let go. I'll never let go." His lips trembled, his body shuddering. "The curse? It's gone." Alara blinked through tears. At first she thought he meant it as hope, as wishful thinking. But then she felt it, the bond between them blazing brighter than ever, not weighed down with chains of darkness, but humming with balance. It wasn't jagged anymore. It wasn't fractured. It pulsed like a heartbeat, strong and whole. The moon goddess had heard her, her love had shattered the curse. Kale sat up slowly, power rippling through him in a way that made even the strongest wolves bow their heads instinctively. But it wasn't the raw, wild power of the beast, it was something greater, something balanced. He wasn't just alpha now. He wasn't just beast or man. He was both king and wolf, whole. The pack lowered themselves one by one, muzzles dipping in reverence. Their whispers filled the clearing. "The curse is broken. The alpha is free. The Luna saved him." Alara's breath caught as every gaze shifted to her. For so long she had been the outsider, the unwanted, the girl marked by fear and suspicion. Now, as the wolves bowed not just to Kale but to her, warmth filled her chest so fiercely she thought it might burst. Kale rose to his feet, still unsteady, but towering with new strength. He reached for her hand, pulling her up beside him. His voice was hoarse but certain as he declared to the pack, "She is my mate. My Luna. My queen." The howl that followed shook the heavens. Wolves lifted their heads to the sky, their voices uniting in thunderous harmony. The bond between Alpha, Luna, and pack sealed in that moment, undeniable and eternal. Alara clung to Kale's hand, tears streaming down her face, not from grief this time, but from joy. For the first time in her life, she wasn't running. She wasn't doubting. She wasn't unloved, she was home. The coronation of the Luna. The days that followed were filled with healing. Villages once shrouded in fear began to breathe again. The rival armies that had followed Malric scattered, their fanatic leader struck down in the final battle. The kingdom, fractured by years of fear and whispers, turned their eyes back to Kale, not as a cursed monster, but as a ruler reborn. The pack prepared for a ceremony unlike any they had ever known. The crowning of a Luna, not by blood or alliance, but by love. Alara stood in the great hall, her gown of silver and deep midnight blue flowing around her. The fabric shimmered like moonlight on water, chosen to honor the bond between wolf and goddess. She looked at her reflection and almost didn't recognize herself, not because of the gown, but because of the way her eyes no longer looked haunted. The doors opened, and Kale entered. He wore no crown, no gilded armor. He didn't need them. The balance within him radiated outward, commanding loyalty without force, respect without fear. When his eyes met hers, the world disappeared. The pack gathered in the hall, their heads bowed as Kale led her to the altar. The moonstone glowed softly at the center, a relic of the goddess herself. Kale's voice carried through the silence. Once, I believed the curse made me unworthy of love. Once, I believed freedom for Alara meant freedom from me. But she chose me. She loved me when I was beast, when I was broken, when I was everything but worthy. And in that love, I found salvation. He turned to her, golden eyes soft. Alara, will you stand beside me as my Luna, not by bond alone, but by choice? Tears slipped down her cheeks. Always. In this life and every life after. She placed her hand upon the moonstone, and a light bloomed, wrapping around her fingers and spilling upward like fire and water entwined. The pack gasped as the glow crowned her head in a halo of silver fire. The goddess had accepted her. The hall erupted in howls, the pack's voices echoing with pride and belonging. Alara lifted her chin, shoulders squared. No longer the outcast, no longer the girl who fled. She was their Luna. She was their queen. Epilogue. The queen's story. The years that followed were not without battles, but they were no longer defined by curses or fear. Together, Kale and Alara rebuilt the kingdom, not with iron and blood, but with unity. Packs that had once been rivals came to kneel not only to the Alpha, but to the Luna who had broken the curse. The people called her the Alpha's cursed bride, but the title no longer carried pain. It was a story, a reminder of how love could turn chains into wings. On quiet nights, Alara would sit in her chamber with parchment spread before her. By candlelight, she wrote their story. Not just the battles and betrayals, but the moments that mattered. Kale's first smile, the touch of his hand. The confession that shattered her fear. She wrote so that generations to come would know that curses could be broken, that beasts could be tamed, not by blades, but by love. Sometimes, Kale would come to her side as she wrote, pressing a kiss to her hair. Still writing our tale, my Luna? She would smile, leaning against his chest. It's not just ours anymore. It belongs to the pack. To the kingdom. To every outcast who needs to know they can find home. He would hum in agreement, his arms wrapping around her. Then write it all. Every scar. Every kiss. Every moment. Let them know the truth. And she did. Her final words upon the parchment were simple, yet true. I was once the cursed bride of the Alpha. But now I am his queen. Loved by both man and beast, and in his arms, I have found forever.